Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Kano Tryharding Modern. This deck currently is meta, although I am not playing the most meta version of this list. I have to point out that I only have 3 Urza's Saga, and I have replaced the 4th one with a Horizon Canopy. I simply cannot afford to drop 60 whatever dollars on Modern Horizons 2 staples. And the only reason that I'm playing this deck is because I've opened 2 Urza's Sagas, and the 3rd one I got out of one of my last 2 Modern Horizons packs once the league closed. I was like, I better open these rather than sell them just because the chance of getting a lottery card's good. Never opened a Ragavan, rip, out of 20 drafts, but, you know, that's how it goes. So what is this deck? This deck is Hammer Time. It looks to abuse Colossus Hammer. So the idea is... we play out a Colossus Hammer, which is a cheap 1 mana +10/+10. We sneak it onto a creature as quickly as possible, and we try to kill our opponent in 1 or 2 swings. So, how do we do that? We have Sigarda's Aid, which is a enchantment that allows us to attach equipment and cast equipment with Flash for free when it enters the battlefield. So we can play Sigarda's Aid and an Ornithopter on turn 1, and turn 2 attach 2 Colossus Hammers to it, kill our opponent, that sort of thing. We also have Pure Steel Paladin, which as long as we have Metalcraft, equip costs are 0, so instead of its regular 8 mana to equip Colossus Hammer, it costs 0 to equip, which is kind of a big deal. We have Steel Shaper's Gift as a tutor. We used to play 4 of this card, however... that has changed with the recent edition of Urza's Saga. Urza's Saga kind of fitting in the mana base and doing what Steel Shaper's Gift is already doing. So my version may not run as well because I only have 3, but it should function closely enough that we'll see some benefit from playing it. Other Modern Horizons 2 addition to the main deck is Esper Sentinel. Esper Sentinel being a 1 mana 1/1 that turns on Metalcraft, or helps to turn on Metalcraft. Just has a good taxing effect. Drawing extra cards is generally pretty good for this deck because this deck tends to run out of cards very quickly, playing a bunch of 0 and 1 drops. If we happen to attach a hammer to it, it becomes a 1 mana 1/1 that's also a Phyrexian Arena because no opponent is going to pay 11 to stop us from drawing a card. It's just not going to happen. But it's kind of a card that has eked out some of the other additions to this deck that we were previously running. I know the red-white version used to play Core Duelist in the 1 mana slot for the one-shot combo on turn 2, but that generally only works if you have Magnetic Theft or Sigarda's Aid, which we're not maxed out, or we're not playing Magnetic Theft because we're not playing red. In the 2-drop slot, we have Stoneforge Mystic, which is our other powerful equipment tutor / creature that can wield Colossus Hammer / way to flash in equipment. I already talked about Pure Steel Paladin. On the 0-drop slot, we have Memnites and Ornithopters alongside our lands. These are great creatures to turn on Metalcraft, great creatures to attach Colossus Hammer to. Generally, you have a redundant creature in case you need to equip something else. And finally, we have Inkmoth Nexus. Inkmoth Nexus being a creature that instantly kills your opponent if you can flash equip a Colossus Hammer to it. Generally, if you have Sigarda's Aid, you attack with Inkmoth Nexus, then you attach Colossus Hammer post blocks because... Colossus Hammer makes the creature it equips to lose flying. So that's a way to kind of cheat in some extra damage, or cheat in around your opponent's blockers. Out of the sideboard, we have Fragmentize to destroy artifacts or enchantments, Path as removal, Seal of Cleansing also to remove artifacts or enchantments. We have Sanctifier Envec, another Modern Horizons 2 addition to this deck. Just protection from black and red seems to matter a lot, and exiling all cards that are black or red from graveyards also seems to matter quite a bit. We have Prismatic Ending, which just seems to be like one of the best removal spells that we can be playing in the modern format right now, which is really weird. I'm kind of sad that this card is not a white removal spell. It is a multicolor removal spell that just happens to include white as a mandatory color cost. Gaia's Blessing for the anti-mill matchup. I presume, I'm not sure what else this would be in the sideboard for. We have Lurrus, because playing Lurrus is free and wrong not to do. We have Relic, we have Pithing Needle, we have Grafdigger's Cage, and we have Tormod's Crypt. That's another addition in the main deck that I have to call out really quick is Pithing Needle, because fetching Pithing Needle off of Urza's Saga can actually be an enormous play. It's one of the better things you can follow up Urza's Saga with in the modern format. Pithing Needle has always kind of been a fringe playable card, and it frequently will will shut down a threat that you otherwise weren't able to answer. So, like, if your opponent's playing a Planeswalker, or your opponent's playing a Grave Hate with an activated ability, and you're playing Dredge or something like that, your opponent's playing Seal of Cleansing, you can Pithing Needle Seal of Cleansing, like, that sort of thing. Alright, well, let's try and do the best we can and give Wizards another reason to ban Lurrus. I'll see you guys in round 1. Alright, we are on the play, and I think this hand is keepable. So, we will keep. We did start by revealing Lurrus. So this deck, actually, I don't remember exactly which metagame it was, but it was a relatively recent one. Pre-Modern Horizons, I think. Play Memnite, tap Memnite, add white, and play Sigarda's Aid. Pass the turn. The other fun thing about Urza's Saga is if you have a Sigarda's Aid down, you can go fetch up Colossus Hammer and just stick it on whatever... happens to, whatever you happen to have on the battlefield. So let's go ahead and tap Memnite for white and colorless. Let's play Stoneforge Mystic. Let's go tutor up Colossus Hammer. Pass the turn. Opponent cracks Arid Mesa for a Raugrin Triumph. They untap. They play an island. They pass. So on our upkeep, play Colossus Hammer. Let's attach it to Memnite. Then we draw Steel Shaper's Gift. Sack Urza's Saga. Get a second Colossus Hammer, put it onto the battlefield, attach it to Stoneforge Mystic, go to combat, and attack for 20. Or 22, actually. That was fair. Oh, man. Don't you just love Modern sometimes? So my opponent is playing some kind of control deck, and I'm not sure why they would in this format, but they are. So... let me check and see what decks are running Raugrin Triumph, because I have not played Constructed for a while now. I've not enjoyed it as much, and Cabal Coffers is not losing its magic, but I'm getting to the point where I need to take a little bit of a break. Wow, there are no Modern decks on the recently played Modern list that are actually playing Raugrin Triumph. That's kind of impressive. I sort of suspect my opponent is going to be playing red removal, so we're going to put Sanctifier Envac in the deck, and I probably don't need Shadow Spear. Actually, I think taking Shadow Spear out is incorrect every single time. Maybe I don't even need Sanctifier Envac. Let's just run it back and see what our opponent's actually doing. But, what was I saying? Right, so I don't think Coffer's Control is losing its magic. I just need to take a little bit of a break from it. And this hand is okay. If we get a second source of mana, we can Pure Steel Paladin. Let's see, our opponent plays a Steam Vents tap. We untap, draw a third Colossus Hammer. So we can either lead on Giver of Runes, or we can lead on Esper Sentinel. I am going to play the Ornithopter this turn. I kind of want to play Esper Sentinel because that forces my opponent to either use both of their mana on their turn to remove it, or they're going to leave up a counter spell for our next play, and then we're going to get to draw another card, which can hopefully get us to a land. Stomping Ground. Is this Niv to Light or something? Or like Bring to Light Valky? So let's go to combat. Attack for 1. Opponent no blocks. They go to 19. Play Giver. Pass the turn. Opponent Lightning Bolts the Esper Sentinel and pays for it. Sorcery Speed. Gotta love it. They play a Dwarven Mine. Okay, so this is probably Transmog Titan, is what I'm seeing. So, play Springleaf Drum, and play Colossus Hammer. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a Wooded Foothills. This could also be the Velomachus deck. I'm not sure if that's more or less likely. I think the Titan deck is more likely, because I think that deck was always more popular. So we untap, we draw another Springleaf Drum. So let's go white, white, and play Pure Steel Paladin. Opponent has Remand. Okay. Well, that kind of determines what we're doing today. Pass the turn. Opponent's probably going to fetch up a Dwarven Mine, just so they don't draw another land unless they need another land. They are going to Lightning Bolt Giver of Runes. That makes sense. There is a little bit of a downside to playing this deck, and I think it's non-zero enough to talk about it, even though it's not relevant to this match. And that is, there's a decent chance that... oh, it's just Emrakul. Don't worry, everybody, it's just Emrakul. We untap. We draw Memnite. So I can play Pure Steel, play Memnite, tap Memnite for white. I can play Springleaf Drum, tap Ornithopter. I have to sack 6 permanents, is it? I'm definitely bringing in Grafdigger's Cage versus my opponent. So I can play Pure Steel and I can equip Hammer. The alternative is I can play Springleaf Drum. I don't have enough permanents, and I won't. And that's just a side effect. Like, I actually could potentially have survived that Emrakul. I just didn't draw any lands. And if I'd drawn lands, my opponent would have been dead a lot faster. So I am going to bring in Grafdigger's Cage. I may want Path to deal with a token. I don't know if that's correct or not. I'm trying to think of what it would be better than. It might be better than Steel Shaper's Gift. I don't know if I want Pithing Needle, because versus my opponent's deck, the only thing that Pithing Needle might hit is like Luca, which I don't know if they're playing or not. And, I mean, I could name like a fetch land. Can't name Dwarven Mine. I'm going to drop Pithing Needle out of the main deck, and I'll play a Path over a Steel Shaper's Gift. And we'll try like that. Yeah, but I have not been as motivated to play Constructed, mainly because I don't have all of the Modern Horizons 2 cards I'd hoped I'd have by this point to try and be competitive. I will keep this, and I'm going to lead on Horizon Canopy Sigarda's Aid. If I could draw a 1-mana creature next turn and immediately suit it up with a hammer, that'd be fantastic. Opponent leads on Wooded Foothills. We draw Stoneforge Mystic. Play Urza's Saga, it gains its ability. Play Mystic. Let's go get a hammer. Pass the turn. Opponent cracks Wooded Foothills. And unless they Sorcery Speed Lightning Bolt, I think they're dead. Okay. We untap, we draw Plains. Urza's Saga gains its second ability. Play a Plains. Play a hammer. Opponent has to try and kill Stoneforge in response. Or have like a Spell Pierce, I guess. Okay. In response to Lightning Bolt, second hammer. Suit up. We now survive the Lightning Bolt. And the game is over. Magic as Richard Garfield intended. Alright, I'll see you guys in round 2. Alright, so round 2, we are on the draw. We don't have a hammer, but we do have a 0-drop and a Springleaf Drum, and a Esper Sentinel and Sigarda's Aid. So, going to be kind of an affinity opener here. We have a couple of lines we can take, and it really depends on our opponent's start. But I can lead on Inkmoth Nexus, play Springleaf Drum, then play Memnite and play Esper Sentinel. Or I can do all of that except Esper Sentinel and play Sigarda's Aid. I think the Esper Sentinel line is better because we only have Springleaf Drum for sources of colored mana. So we need to ensure that we get a second creature on board. Esper Sentinel also taxes our opponent, hopefully getting us closer to a... Okay, never mind. Opponent just takes Springleaf Drum and we're dead in the water. Opponent Thought Seizes and takes Sigarda's Aid. That is not what I expected from my opponent. We draw Plains, and that is useful. So, lead on Springleaf Drum, play Memnite, and play Esper Sentinel. Pass the turn. I really think this deck was the best deck in the format a while back. I don't think anybody talked about it either. But there was a period of time where I had like 5 consecutive 5-0s with 1 4-1 in there somewhere. It was pretty crazy. So my opponent is going to Inquisition. They pay the Sentinel tax. They can take Stoneforge or they can take Pure Steel. Okay. They take Stoneforge, which is a worse take if we happen to draw Hammer here. But we did not. So let's go ahead and play Pure Steel. Go to combat, and attack for 1. Hit our opponent down to 14. I think my opponent's takes were really questionable. So they pay the Sentinel cost for 2 Mishra's Baubles. Then they bolt Pure Steel. And they crack Bauble, and they pass. Okay. We untap. We draw Ornithopter. So, play Silent Clearing. And I can either put Lurrus in my hand... or I can crack Clearing, and I think putting Lurrus in my hand is correct. Go to combat. It's unlikely we're going to get to 6 mana, especially when I'm thinking about cashing in that Silent Clearing. It's also possible my opponent has another 2 Hand Hate spells, so I am going to play out this Ornithopter. Pass the turn. Opponent cracks Bauble, so they're going to draw 2 cards this turn. Opponent plays Scalding Tarn. Plays Dragon's Rage Channeler, and passes. We untap. We draw Springleaf Drum. So, play Lurrus. This is probably going to get counterspelled, or not. Then we're going to play Sigarda's Aid. Opponent cracks Scalding Tarn. Shocks Watery Grave, goes to 9. So they might have a Drown in the lock. But if they do, they can only counter. They can't kill Lurrus. Okay, they Fatal Push Lurrus. They get a Delirium, or a Surveil trigger off of Dragon's Rage Channeler. They put Thought Scour into the grave. They pay the Sentinel cost. You know, this Sentinel is doing a really good Sphere of Resistance impression. I had a lot of I had a few people telling me this card was bad, and I actually think I thought from the beginning this card was good. I thought it was underwhelming, but I thought it was still good. Like, it is better than I initially thought it was, for sure, and only because opponents have been really scared of me drawing cards. So we untap, we draw Springleaf Drum. Let's cash in Silent Clearing, see what we get. Another Esper Sentinel. Play Esper Sentinel. And play Springleaf Drum. And Springleaf Drum. That should give us enough mana to play whatever we draw. / want to play. Now our opponent has to pay 3 mana if they don't want us to draw a card to cast a 1 mana spell. Which they can, they have plenty. They attack us for 6. Yeah, take 6, go to 9. Then they pass. We untap. We draw another Sigarda's Aid, which is really not what I wanted to draw. Go to combat, and we are going to attack for 3, leaving back the Ornithopter and Inkmoth Nexus. Opponent goes to 6, pass the turn. I'm going to leave Sigarda's Aid in hand, make him think I drew something good that I want to play at instant speed. Okay? Opponent goes to combat, and attacks for 6. Fire up Inkmoth, then declare blocks. I don't want to leave myself dead to single or double bolt. I mean, it's not likely they have double bolt because I've already cast 1, but it's still possible. We untap, we draw Inkmoth, play Inkmoth, go to combat, attack for 3. Opponent is going to Fatal Push, so they get 2 Surveils, another Surveil. They're leaving it on top. Esper Sentinel triggers. Opponent pays for it, and pays for it, presumably. We lose our Sentinel. They take 2 and go to 4. We pass. Opponent untaps. They do not crack Bloodstained Mire because they want to draw whatever's on top of their deck. Now they crack Bloodstained Mire for a Swamp. I mean, we are dead to light. No, I guess we still animate Inkmoth and block. Opponent plays a Gurmag Angler. Okay. They go to combat, and they attack, animate Inkmoth, block the 3/3 Dragon's Rage Channeler. Actually, that may have been incorrect. Because that makes... I guess Stoneforge is a bad draw regardless, but we draw Horizon Canopy. So play Canopy, cash it in, and scoop. Opponent's got too much removal. Too much value. Okay, I definitely want Sanctifier Envec, because that card just feels unbeatable for my opponent's deck. Prismatic Ending, Path to Exile coming in. Let me see what decks run Gurmag specifically. So out of the sideboard, they'll have Engineered Explosives, Kolagon's Command, maybe a Terminate. They also have Hurkyl's Recall. At least the list I happened to pick up looked at has it. We don't have any really... We don't have any, like, counter hate or anything like that. I don't think Pithing Needle is as good here. Let me double check their deck list. Yeah, Pithing Needle does not do a whole lot. I mean, I guess I could name Bauble with it, but that doesn't really strike me as that good. So I think Steel Shaper's Gift probably is bad versus them. Prismatic Ending is actually just a 1-mana spell. Path kind of is a necessary evil. I guess I cut maybe an Esper Sentinel. I could cut a land and go to 20. Only going to bring in 1 path. Let's try it like this. Cutting Esper Sentinel feels kind of iffy. Alright, we'll play first. We have a Sanctifier Envec, and this is our best chance to get it down. So if our opponent has a piece of hand hate, they're probably going to have to take Sanctifier. My opponent has mulliganed to 5 cards, so they are probably trying to mulligan to hand hate. Okay. So they kept 5. Lead on Plains, play Ornithopter, pass the turn. Opponent leads on Polluted Delta, fetches and shocks Blood Crypt, Thoughtseize. They gotta take Sanctifier. I don't think they have an answer to it otherwise. Okay, Sanctifier to the grave. They play Bauble. They crack Bauble. Then we untap. They draw a card. We draw Sigarda's Aid. So play a Plains. Play Stoneforge Mystic. Let's go get a Colossus Hammer. Pass the turn. So opponent knows we have Pure Steel Paladin and Colossus Hammer. They do not know we have Sigarda's Aid. They Inquisition, so they have their pick of whatever they want. They take Sigarda's Aid. Then they pass. We draw another Colossus Hammer. Play Horizon Canopy. Play Pure Steel. Cast Hammer. So opponent's going to kill Pure Steel. Yep. Hammer resolves. Go to combat. Hit our opponent for 1. So we're looking to, next turn, probably put Lurrus into our hand unless we draw Sigarda's Aid or another Pure Steel. Opponent plays Dragon's Rage Channeler. We untap. We draw Giver of Runes. Put Lurrus in our hand. Pass the turn. Opponent, I think, is thinking about using Push or Thought Scour. I mean, that's really the only 2 cards they would have that they can cast as an instant here. Thought Scour. Okay. They're going to mill us. That's interesting. Their deck is made to mill itself, so unless they're playing Surgical, that doesn't make any sense. Unless they're trying so hard to hit a land. I've said this in a bunch of other videos, but I'll say it here again. If you're playing Grixis Death Shadow or any other deck playing Thought Scour, you want to mill yourself for Delirium. Always mill yourself. Unless you have a Surgical, unless you know what's on top of your deck, and you need to draw that card, mill yourself. Even if you mill over a land, it's still correct to do that. Opponent plays a Gurmag Angler and a Death Shadow. They have 1 card left in hand. We untap. We draw another Ornithopter. That is less than good. I was kind of hoping for a land there so I could play Sigarda's Aid, but play Giver, play Ornithopter, pass the turn. So we will be chumping 1 creature. You see, if my opponent had milled themselves there, they would still have more cards for potentially Delirium. They still wouldn't have Delirium, I don't think. Well, no, because they have a couple of cards with multiple card types, don't they? No, I guess they don't have any artifact creatures or anything like that, so... Opponent plays Douthie Voidwalker. Okay, there's some scenarios where, like, playing Douthie Voidwalker would matter, right? Like, for milling your opponent, I mean. Okay, we are going to chump with an Ornithopter, maintain our life total... Then we untap. We draw Springleaf Drum. Well, it's effectively mana neutral. Play Springleaf Drum. Tap Stoneforge. Play Lurrus, because we really don't have a choice at this point. Oh, Ornithopter's in the exile zone. I was like, oh, I'll just replay Ornithopter. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Bloodstained Mire. They go to combat. Take the damage. We need to keep up Giver of Runes basically at all times. They left back both a red and a black creature to block, but they don't have any flying blockers. So we untap, we draw Silent Clearing, play Silent Clearing. Now if their last card is a counterspell, I don't think I have any meaningful decisions I can play here. I could play Sanctifier Envec, which would give me like infinite blocks. I could also just play Pure Steel Paladin. Let's do that. Because if they don't have removal or a counterspell here, if they're bluffing and just have a land, they're dead. No, they're not, because I can't equip at instant speed. So the first thing we need to do is put this hammer here. Okay? Then what we need to do is play another hammer, draw a card. Wrong order. Equip Lurrus again, go to combat. Attack for very much lethal. So opponent should block with Douthie Voidwalker and sack it, saying that they can play Ornithopter this turn, even though they can't. Unless they're going to use Douthie Voidwalker to try and... Okay, they just let us gain up to 30 life. That probably means we win. Probably. Not absolutely, but... So... Move the equipment over to Stoneforge. Move the equipment over to Pure Steel. Pass the turn. And opponent scoops. Alright. Alright, we got there. They did mull to 5, though, so... I'm really worried about Ragavan, which is one of the things I was going to be talking about earlier, the downside of this deck that wasn't relevant in the match that I was playing it. I think I got cut off. Ragavan can just play any card out of our deck, which could matter a ton, especially versus our opponent's deck, which is in theory playing a playset, even though we haven't seen one yet. Run it back. Reveal Lurrus. Alright, we've got a Giver, we've got an Ink Moth, we've got a Springleaf Drum, and a Stoneforge. So I guess let's do this. Opponent is on the play and considering mulligans. They keep 7, and we will as well. Opponent plays Polluted Delta, Shocks Watery Grave, and Inquisition, as they never not have it. I mean, like, even my decks that run 4 Inquisition, 4 Thoughtseize don't seem to have Inquisition and Thoughtseize as much as my opponents do. And I don't know why that is. So they take Giver of Runes, we draw Sanctifier, play a Plains, play Springleaf Drum, and pass the turn. We have to kind of hope that our opponent does not have a second Thoughtseize. They Thought Scour themselves, milling Polluted Delta and Thoughtseize. They play a Bauble and Crack. Then they pass. We draw Colossus Hammer, play Horizon Canopy, and let's resolve a Sanctifier. That does help cut down on my opponent's Delve ability, and now they're going to have a really tough time removing this card. They scoop! They cannot beat a resolved Sanctifier. That is impressive. Oh my gosh. We didn't even have a good hand after that. They just couldn't beat it. I've kind of run into that scenario with Auriok Champion before, and maybe this deck is just playing Sanctifier as an alternative Auriok because maybe the life gain is more relevant, but like, the one that I saw was playing for Urza Saga. The only reason that, like, Sanctifier I could see being played is the Exile, and the fact that, like, we took our opponent's Delve away from them. That might have been their only play. That's pretty good. I'll see you guys in round 3. Alright, round 3 will be on the play, revealing Sanctifier and the old legendary triple Urza's Saga hand. So, I think we gotta keep. We are also against a Lurrus deck. Alright, so lead on Urza's Saga and play Shadow Spear, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Bloodstained Mire and passes. We draw Silent Clearing, Urza's Saga, triggered ability, play a Plains, play Stoneforge Mystic, go get 1 Gigantic Hammer, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a Wooded Foothills, crack Bloodstained Mire, get a Watery Grave, they crack Wooded Foothills, and they get a Stomping Grounds. They are playing a 4-color deck with Tarmogoyf. Well, allow me to demonstrate why this is wrong. So on our main phase, in response, float mana. Let us go get another Colossus Hammer, play a Plains, play Pure Steel, play Hammer, draw a card. How the mighty have fallen, Tarmogoyf. You used to be a relevant threat. Why play a lifelink, or why play a 2/3 that could grow when you can play a 22/23 lifelink and trample on the next turn? So awful. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, this deck is good. It highlights one of the problems with Lurrus, because playing Lurrus in this deck is free. And it should playing Lurrus or playing any companion should never be a free include. You should have to build your deck with some ideas of what you have to include and exclude to get a companion to work. And any deck that Lurrus goes into, it goes into for free. And this deck is powerful enough without being able to buy stuff back from the grave, or having an 8th card in hand that you have to pay 6 mana for. Like, it doesn't need it, but I know I'm not using Lurrus to win all that much, but the fact that this deck is this powerful without him, I really think this card should be banned. And Ragavan too, but that's a different story. And if you want to know why, go ahead and join my Discord, call to action. And links in the description below. And you can go just search any post I've made about Ragavan. I've ranted a lot. I also ranted about it in a recent Mad Meta, so... let's see. Versus the Tarmogoyf 4-color deck. Let's drop, I think, Pithing Needle. My goodness, I have so many texts coming in right now, I'm going to have to silence my phone. I kind of want Path, but I think Prismatic Ending is in general going to be better. So I dropped a Pithing Needle, I dropped a Steel Shaper's Gift, and I'm going to drop 1 Esper Sentinel because I brought in the Sanctifiers, which I suspect are probably going to be good. Actually, I'm only going to bring in 1 Prismatic Ending. Alright, begin by revealing Lurrus. It seems good. I will be keeping this hand. Urza's Saga in this deck also feels very broken. Just being able to get like an uncounterable hammer and put a hammer trigger on the stack after floating mana, like off of a Sigarda's Aid, for example. Okay, they're going to lead on hand... Oh, they're going to lead on Alpine Moon. You're going to Alpine Moon my Urza's Saga, bro? Wow. Sure. We draw Esper Sentinel. So play Ink Moth, play Springleaf, play Memnite, float white mana, play Sigarda's Aid. The reason I'm playing Sigarda's Aid is because I technically have the turn 2 kill, so if my opponent taps out for Tarmogoyf, they're just dead again. Alpine Moon for Urza's Saga. Is that ever correct? Second Alpine Moon on Ink Moth. Okay, that actually hurts a little bit. But I mean, we've got a free mana of any color now. Second Ink Moth, so play it. Play Esper Sentinel, go to combat, and attack for 1. You know what? I am going to flash in the hammer. If they cast a spell, we draw a card. They fetch up a Steam Vents going to 14. They Lightning Bolt, we draw. Second Sigarda's Aid. Okay? Let's play a second Sigarda's Aid. Pass the turn. Opponent plays Polluted Delta, cracks Polluted Delta, shocks a Watery Grave, plays a Death Shadow as a 2/2 and a Dragon's Rage Channeler. We untap and draw Silent Clearing. So, play Silent Clearing, put Lurrus in our hand, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, draws up to their second card, shocks an Overgrown Tomb. So they must be playing 4-color Shadow with Traverse the Elvenwald. They hit us for 5. We untap, we draw a Giver of Runes. So, play Horizon Canopy, play Lurrus, play Memnite, play Giver, and pass the turn. Opponent untaps, they draw. That Giver of Runes and Lurrus make it much harder for my opponent. Yeah. They play a second Dragon's Rage Channeler. We untap, we draw planes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. Play planes. Let's sack Horizon Canopy. I thought about trying to draw up to 8 mana, but Stoneforge Mystic here is much better. Play Stoneforge Mystic. Let's go and tutor up Colossus Hammer. And game's over. Wow. This deck really is good. I thought it would be a lot worse versus those decks, but the Sanctifier Envec and the layers of protection that you get from Giver and the natural immunity to lightning bolts by just attaching hammers, that's really good. That's really, really good. I'll see you guys in round 4. Alright, welcome back to round 4. We will be on the play. This seems like a really good hand. We will be keeping. Opponent is also a Lurrus deck. So, lead on Urza's Saga. Play Springleaf Drum. Play Memnite. Float white and play Sigarda's Aid. Pass the turn. Seems good. Opponent leads on Blood Crypt, untapped, plays a Bauble, cracks Bauble looking at our top deck, and Thought Seizes taking Pure Steel. Sure. They draw a card, we draw Silent Clearing. So Urza's Saga gets its second ability. Play Ink Moth, pass the turn. We're going to make a token off of Saga. Opponent untaps, they play a Mountain, they play a Dragon's Rage Channeler, make a Construct, and we untap, make another Construct, we draw a Plains. Let's go and get a, honestly, Shadow Spear now that we've got these tokens. Attach it to the Construct, play a Plains, go to combat, attack for 6 with Lifelink. Opponent bolts, so they get to Surveil. So they're trying to hit Delirium off of their Surveil, and they will. Wow. So let them block. Animate Ink Moth. Make it bigger. Just eat their creature, the game's over. Oh my god. Urza's Saga OP. I'm only not playing 4 because I can't afford the 4th. Alright, Sanctifier Envex coming in. Prismatic Ending. 2 Prismatic Endings coming in. We're going to drop an Esper Sentinel. We're going to drop a Pithing Needle. We're going to cut a land. And you know what? I'm only going to bring in 1 Prismatic Ending. This deck definitely appears to eat the monkey deck alive. Although we haven't seen any monkey, which might be why that's happening. I don't know. Alright, so we both reveal Lurrus. This hand is nowhere near as explosive. But I think it's probably still worth keeping. Yeah, they kept 7. I think we ought to keep 7. Opponent definitely going to lead on Thoughtseize, otherwise they're just screwed. And if they do Thoughtseize, I'm pretty sure they take Sigarda's Aid. That is too much value for us to be able to move equipment around their instant speed removal. Ah, yes. Monkey. We untap. draw Silent Clearing, play a Plains, play an Aid, Memnite, Ornithopter, Ornithopter. There will be no monkey connecting here. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a Swamp. Engineered Explosives on 0. Never mind. They hit us with the monkey, so they see what they exile. Stoneforge. Well, thank goodness they can't cast it. And they play Dragon's Rage Channeler. They bobble, getting a Surveil. I keep wanting to call that Delve. It's not. They put a Black Cleave Cliffs into the grave because they don't want to draw land. They immediately crack Bauble. We untap. They draw. We draw Giver. So play a Plains. Play Mystic. And let's go get a Hammer. Pass the turn. So opponent knows we have Giver and Hammer in hand, because I'm pretty sure they looked at us with Bauble. They play a second Dragon's Rage Channeler and a land. They crack Bloodstained Mire for a Sacred Foundry untapped. It looks like they're delving. Prismatic Ending, okay. I'm not sure that that was the correct choice. I think you Prismatic End the Sigarda's Aid, but they attack us for 3. See what they exile. Ink Moth Nexus. Alright, we untap. Draw Plains. Play Giver. I think we do suit it up immediately, because that nullifies them having Bolt. Except for the fact that they still have treasure mana, so if they had Bolt there, I'd have been screwed. That was actually really dumb. Remember, do as I say, not as I do. Opponent Kolaghan's Command, killing the Hammer and the Giver. That is not good. We are now taking 8, and our opponent is drawing extra cards. Exiling a Plains. We untap. We draw Steel Shaper's Gift. Sack Silent Clearing. We draw Springleaf Drum. Alright, I think we lost. We don't have a Flare Husk in this version, so we can't Steel Shaper's Gift for a Flare Husk and block. Okay, I want Esper Sentinel more than I want a Steel Shaper's Gift. Run it back. If we could get an opener with another Urza's Saga, I think that would help a lot as well. I would like to play first. Reveal Luris. So does our opponent. Okay, I will be keeping this hand. It's a little bit risky, but at the same time, not so much. Play Saga. Get its ability. Play Drum. Play Ornithopter. Memnite. Put Shadow Spear into play. Pass the turn. What will you do now, Batman? We really want to draw a land. Like, really badly. Opponent shocks Godless Shrine. They Prismatic End Springleaf Drum. That makes us want to land even more. Okay. Opponent immediately cracks Bauble. We untap. They draw. We draw. Ornithopter, which is not a land. Urza's Saga gets its second ability. Unfortunately, we might be screwed. Prismatic Ending on that Springleaf Drum really mattered a lot. So we're going to have to get a Springleaf Drum off of Urza's Saga. Otherwise, we're just never casting anything else. I guess I should have maybe held on to that Ornithopter, because if they have a land Engineered Explosives crack it, we are next level screwed. There's a Black Cleave Cliffs. They play Dragon's Rage Channeler. They play a Bauble. They Surveil. They put Monkey in the grave. Crack Bauble. I think they have Push. They have a Thoughtseize. Okay, so they will take Stoneforge Mystic. So we're going to have to get Springleaf Drum and then Prismatic End Dragon's Rage Channeler. Unless they take Prismatic Ending, which is possible, then we need to draw a land if that happens. If they take Stoneforge Mystic, Springleaf Drum, or land is an okay draw. Okay, we want to draw a land. We untap. Opponent gets to draw a card. We draw a land. Okay, wait till our main. Float mana. Yeah, we still want Springleaf Drum. Play Silent Clearing. Play Stoneforge. Then get Colossus Hammer. Go to combat. Attack for 1. I don't think my opponent can create Delirium at instant speed. Because the only thing I could think of they could do is maybe cycle a Street Wraith, but I doubt they even play Street Wraith. Opponent plays a Black Cleave Cliffs. They might have Kolaghan's Command here. They have Kroxa, forcing us to discard Hammer. Okay. We can top deck anything here, and it will be mostly good. Other than maybe a land, but land is still okay. I'd really like to draw a Sanctifier as long as my opponent doesn't get rid of Springleaf Drum or all of my creatures. Oh, there goes Springleaf Drum. So now if I could draw a land, that would be good. Gotta hope they don't put an instant into the grave. Okay, whatever it is, they put it on top. It's probably a land for Kroxa. Okay, we untap. We draw Sigarda's Aid. That makes a lot of our top decks really scary. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Opponent takes 2 and goes to 12. Now, if my opponent spends their turn reanimating Kroxa, and we draw anything that we can play, it's great. We're still at a relatively high life total, and our opponent is running out of cards. And, like, if I draw another Urza's Saga, like, that would be insane. I guess only if we drew another land after that. Opponent is playing Expressive Iteration. This might only be a draw 1, unless they hit bauble number 3. I think they're just digging for removal, or their next Prismatic Ending. Their Bana base also makes more sense with Prismatic Ending. It's also really gross that they're splashing a 5-color removal spell. But I guess Ragavan and Fetch lands make that possible. They put Alpine Moon into the Exile Zone. So they're probably going to Alpine Moon, Urza's Saga. They still only have 3 card types in the grave, and they just threw a Thoughtseize in the grave from the top of their deck. Man, Dragon's Rage Channeler being able to filter away your top decked hand hate is pretty good. This is the longest I've seen them go without Delirium. Opponent tears to destroy Sigarda's Aid. So they finally have Delirium, and they have to start attacking every turn. Okay, so they hit us for 3, no blocks. We untap. We draw Urza's Saga. This is ultimately... Lands your opponent's control with the chosen name lose all land types and abilities. A Saga's not a land type! So it's still a Saga, it just loses its abilities. It doesn't lose land abilities, it loses abilities. Okay, that's really punishing. Here I was thinking I'd get a Rainbow land out of the deal. Now if I had played it prior to Alpine Moon and it had a counter on it, then they Alpine Mooned it, it would have been fine. But it loses the gain the first chapter trigger, or gain the first chapter replacement effect enters the battlefield, or whatever. However that works out, rules-wise. I don't know if that's actually the interaction, but it wouldn't surprise me considering how often that got named. So opponent's going to play Kroxa here. We're going to lose 3 life and go to 9. Really need to top deck Colossus Hammer this turn. If we do, we win. If we don't, we're probably losing. Okay? Colossus Hammer 1 time. 1 time Colossus Hammer. That is not Colossus Hammer. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They go to combat, attack, attack. We have to discard Pure Steel. We don't take damage from that. Chump Kroxa. Oh, actually, Colossus Hammer didn't do it because I lost Sigarda's Aid. For some reason, I thought I still had it. Opponent puts Lurrus in their hand. We untap. We finally get a land. Equip Memnite. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Opponent has Path, which they've been saving this entire time because they didn't want to give us mana. If they have a Lightning Bolt, we're dead. But when is that not the case, right? Okay, never mind, we're dead. Alright, well I kept a really sketchy hand, so I guess I deserve to lose that one. I'm surprised how long we were able to fight, but our opponent was also slow rolling a Path. When I kept that hand, I did not think about the possibility of Prismatic Ending, and I did not consider the fact they could answer they could effectively wasteland us with Prismatic Vista, or 1-mana Sinkhole, or whatever you want to call it, by hitting our Springleaf Drum. The fact that they had 2 was really backbreaking, and the fact that Alpine Moon stops Urza's Saga from actually entering the battlefield, that I didn't know. It makes sense because it loses land types only. It doesn't lose all types, which, yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess we learned something. I'll see you guys in round 5. All right, round 5, and we're on the draw. I will be keeping this. Opponent is playing a Kahira the Orphan Guard deck. That's interesting. That is played in the 5-color elemental deck only. Opponent leads on Sacred Foundry, probably playing Flamekin Harbinger. I couldn't remember the name of that, which is why I stumbled there for a second. I knew what they were playing, though. They're putting Risen Reef on top of their deck. Alright, we untap. We draw Stoneforge Mystic. So, play Urza's Saga. Play Memnite. Pass the turn. Opponent plays an Unclaimed Territory. Actually, should have waited until next turn to play Memnite. They attack for 1, no blocks. Take 1, go to 19. Opponent passes. We draw Steel Shaper's Gift. Play a Plains. Play Sigarda's Aid, and pass the turn. Actually, do they play anything with Flash? They play Ephemerate, so no attacks. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Opponent plays an island. Going with Risen Reef. Okay. So they reveal nothing. They just draw a card. Okay. They pass the turn. We untap. We draw Colossus Hammer. That kills our opponent. Go to our main phase. float mana. Tutor for Colossus Hammer. Attach it. Play Colossus Hammer. Attach it. Play a Plains, Steel Shaper's Gift, Shadow Spear. Attach it. Attack for 22 lifelink. Trample on turn 3. Once again, Magic the Gathering as Richard Garfield intended. Opponent has Solitude! No! My only weakness! We still gain 20-some life. But my opponent does get to draw a card off of their Solitude, which is pretty good. Never mind, we're at 41 life. Pass the turn. So now we need to draw, like, Pure Steel. I can load this Stoneforge Mystic up, but opponent is drawing cards. They play a Steam Vents tapped. So that was in their original hand. That wasn't something they drew. Otherwise, they would have just put it on the battlefield. We untap. We draw Stoneforge Mystic. Play a Plains. Play Stoneforge. Go and get Colossus Hammer. Steel Shaper's Gift. Go and get Colossus Hammer. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Blue something something. This is probably like Risen Reef number 3. Lol. Opponent draws a gazillion cards. Putting a land into play, land into play. What are the odds they have a second Solitude? They play 4. So, really good. They Solitude, exiling Omnath, getting land, something, something. Exiling our guy. They hit us for 3, we go to 37. We untap, we draw Plains. Play a Plains. Play Stoneforge Mystic. They have Subtlety. I mean, when every card you cast is free and it Coiling Oracles you 3 times, that's gonna be tough to beat, I'll be honest. Opponent draws a card, draws a card. Do we even have any other equipment in the main deck? I'm actually gonna check. I don't think we do. I think it's just those 4 pieces. Any other creature I think would be better, but it's still a creature, so we're gonna put it on top. Okay. Opponent untaps. They play 2 Subtlety and 4 Solitude. Kind of makes me wish I had Swiftfoot Boots. Some versions of this deck have run Swiftfoot Boots or Lightning Greaves in the past. Opponent fetches up a Plains and fetches a Breeding Pool. I really thought we had this game in the bag, but I forgot Solitude existed. Oh, the 4th Risen Reef. That's fine. I'm honestly a little bit glad that this game did not just end on turn 3. Because too many games in Modern are ending on, like, turn 1 virtually, turn 2, or turn 3 literally. But, at the same time, I am really annoyed that I lost to a free effect, because I was like, oh, my opponent's tapped out! This is Modern! What does that mean? Nothing. I'm a little bit upset about that. Because it's not like we have anything with haste. So besides free removal, which is going to be very difficult for us to deal with, we do have to watch out for Foundation Breaker, more Subtleties, a Fury. Ah, yes, the other Omnath. So my hope at this point is my opponent decks themselves, because they have no choice but to draw whenever they cast cards now. They shoot us for a lot. They go to combat, attack us for 4. We go to 22. They have to discard 8 cards? I mean, that's not 0, right? So odds are they're going to be holding at least 1 Subtlety and at least 1 Solitude. So we're just going to get time walked for free. I don't think we can win. It just worked out very unfortunately for us. Because, like, our hope is either have enough creatures and, like, a Pure Steel to follow up with. Oh, they discarded a whole bunch of Furies. Okay, well, Fury's not an instant, but it means we can't just leave creatures sitting around on the battlefield. Play Stoneforge Mystic. Alright, that's going to be game. I could bring in Prismatic Ending. Seal of Clan. I guess we just bring in Path. Ramping our opponent is bad, but Prismatic Ending is not going to kill all that much. Probably. My opponent has no non-creature spells except maybe Ephemerate, or like maybe Aether Vial. So I think I'm going to cut Esper Sentinels probably entirely, actually. And run it back. Yeah, they don't cast creature spells from graveyards or libraries, and creature cards tend to only enter the battlefield from their hand, or exile. So we don't, like, it's interesting that we run into elementals in round 4 in the 3-in-1 bracket. Because I didn't think that deck was that good, but it looks like they've kind of improved the deck a lot since the last time I played. Like, Omnath Locus of the Royal was one of the suggestions that I got to add to that deck for like an instant kill combo. And it's not the glimpse version, which I think is worse. Like, potentially higher power, because you could just, like, kill your opponent on turn 2, after resolving a trillion triggers that you have to remember and stack correctly. But, alright, I would like to play first. Reveal Luris. I basically have to hope my opponent keeps a Subtlety and Solitude and nothing to pitch to it, which is not really a great hope. We will be keeping this hand because we have Sigarda's Aid, 2 Ornithopters, and potentially turn 2 Colossus Hammer on one of them. Play Silent Clearing, play Sigarda's Aid, Ornithopter, Ornithopter. If I draw a land, I will be playing a Pure Steel Paladin first, because I would need to draw... I want to draw extra cards here, basically, is what that boils down to. We draw a Memnite, play Memnite, go to combat, attack. Alright, do you have the answer? We definitely know you have. Hit them for 10? We hit them for 10. They go to 10. Pass the turn. They crack a Windswept Teeth and go to 9. But that also doesn't mean anything. They could totally have an answer. Like, they could have... They don't. We just got them with the turn 3. But I don't think my opponent will make that mistake again. So, I mean, we really don't have any other sideboard. We just run it back. I don't know how we beat Subtlety and Solitude. This hand is a lot riskier. We have only one threat. I think we have to mulligan. Because there's no way my opponent keeps a hand without removal this time around. Not after last game. And this isn't even a particularly fast hand or consistent hand either. Alright. Mulligan to 6. Going to 5. Sure. Put back Horizon Canopy, and I guess Springleaf Drum. Actually, put back Horizon Canopy and a Stoneforge Mystic. I think this gives us our highest power hand with most chance of drawing something useful. Opponent did end up keeping 7. So they're just going to Flamekin Harbinger for Solitude if they don't have it. And then, like, what do we do? Man, Kahira might just be in there as a 3-mana, you can now cast Swords to Plowshares. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Voice of Resurgence. Okay. Well, we untap, draw a path, play Plains, play Springleaf Drum, play Ornithopter, pass the turn. We can cast a path if we have to. Opponent untaps, they draw. They play a Flooded Strand, and they pass. The fact that they got Voice of Resurgence tells me they kept a hand with Solitude that didn't have a way to pitch Solitude. Play Stoneforge Mystic. We'll go and get Colossus Hammer. And we're going to play Sigarda's Aid. So we have to somehow overwhelm the number of removal spells they have, which is at least 1, and we can't currently overwhelm 1 removal spell, which is bad. I really wish we had Apostle's Blessing in this deck. Okay, opponent fetches up a Sacred Foundry. Yeah, they definitely have Solitude. They play Temple Garden tapped. We untap. We draw Prismatic Ending. So... Prismatic Ending? Actually, let's not do that. Go to combat. Attack for 0. Play Hammer. They're going to wait for us to target, and they can Solitude in response, and we gain no life. Okay, they pitch Voice of Resurgence. I could path my own Ornithopter here. There might be some merit in that because I do need mana, and that would also let me get a redraw of Silent Clearing. So I'm actually going to do that. I should have waited... Oh, never mind. They stacked the triggers properly. So my opponent could actually Ephemerate in response to this if they wanted to, and then they would just exile my whole board. That would be terrible. Oh, God. I mean, like, what was I doing? How was I going to get around that, right? It just goes back to, like, I have no idea how we beat Solitude in any deck. Like, I'd have to play Void Mirror or something like that, and then I would not be able to cast Memnites and Ornithopters. Opponent Ephemerates Flamekin Harbinger, so they get to pick what they're drawing this turn. Foundation Breaker. It's just another card we can't beat. So they're going to kill Sigarda's Aid. I mean, like, maybe I was supposed to Prismatic Ending to kill Harbinger, so that they couldn't do that, but... Draw Plains, play a Plains, put Luris in our hand. Pass the turn. That at least lets me replay Sigarda's Aid. Opponent plays a Risen Reef, draws a card. We get hit for 4 and go to 13. And now if my opponent can pitch a Subtlety, like, there's just nothing we can do. Okay, we draw Steel Shaper's Gift, play Luris, play Sigarda's Aid, pass the turn. Opponent plays a second Risen Reef, drawing a card, and drawing a card. So if they have another Solitude, or they can play an untapped white land and have an Ephemerate, okay, they play a tapped white land. That tells me they probably just have the stuff to cast Solitude. They attack us for 3, we go to 9. Untap. I'd like to draw either another Hammer or Shadow Spear. Play Horizon Canopy. I could hit a 3-drop with Prismatic Ending, but I don't think that matters. I played a land this turn, so Steel Shaper's Gift. Get a Hammer. Go to combat. Attack with Luris. Opponent no blocks, so flash in the Hammer. Suit up. We gain 10. Pass the turn. They untap. They draw. They play Omnath. So they draw a card and get 2 Risen Reef triggers. So they draw. They put a land into play tapped. They gain 4. Then they draw. We have to dodge Ephemerate and Solitude somehow. And it is super likely that they've just got it. Like, every nanosecond that it doesn't happen to us is a miracle. There's a Misty. They add a bunch of mana. Risen Reef number 3. And draw a million cards. Yeah, we're dead to about 9 cards in their deck. Actually, it's more than that. No, it's still about 9 cards. We're dead to about 9 cards in our opponent's deck. 3 Solitude, 3 Ephemerate, Foundation Breaker, which they generally only play 2 out of the sideboard of. Opponent fetches, they get another Omnath trigger, but it doesn't do anything because it's the 4th one. Yep, gain a bunch of life. Opponent draws a million more cards. And, like, I could have Prismatic Endinged one of the Risen Reefs, right? Had I not sacked Horizon Canopy. But had I not sacked Horizon Canopy, I never would have connected with the Hammer in the first place. We get hit for 3. So I need to draw a creature, and Pure Steel is preferable. Okay, pretty sure I'm dead. Okay, we get an Urza Saga. Maybe that's enough. Maybe. Maybe we can just make enough tokens that it doesn't matter. It's not likely, but I guess it's possible. We can go get Shadow Spear. This probably doesn't work because odds are my opponent just blinks something, draws their other Foundation Breaker, and answers Urza's Saga. Never mind, they just blink. I needed to exile that. Yeah, no, I'm really surprised at how unbelievably brutal of a beating this deck is delivering to us right now. It's just playing on a completely different axis of the game that we don't interact with. I mean, technically we can. We have removal spells, but we have no way to protect from any of their removal. We do not have resilient creatures. Like, maybe Saga's it. Maybe I was supposed to mulligan to Saga and then just try and make a bunch of tokens. But, like, that doesn't even really do it either. Yeah, they get Foundation Breaker. They play another Flamekin Harbinger. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and concede. I know it's the last game, but there's just nothing we can do. Alright, well, we still get a treasure chest. We still get our entry back, so let's go ahead and open our treasure chest, then I'll talk about the deck. Treasure chest gets us 20 play points and a Soul of the Harvest. Alright, so deck definitely beats the Ragavan deck, which is good. We only played against it 3 times, and I definitely punted the round we lost versus it. I don't remember what I did at this point, but I know that I definitely punted. Deck's really, really strong. Definitely play 4 Urza Saga if you got them. Only reason I haven't is because the card's $60 and I can't afford a 4th. Memnite Ornithopter Pure Steel Paladin. I think this is the more consistent version of the deck than the white-red version. The white-red version is a little bit suspect because we're playing... In the white-red version, you have to play Magnetic Theft, and it's a little bit worse because it relies on your first turn creature surviving, which I just don't see happening versus most decks. I think playing the 0-drops, the Memnites, the Ornithopters, is the way to go to get something to survive your opponent's removal, force them to play Hand Hate, force them to do something on turn 1, right? Hand Hate is a pretty bad beating for this deck, but even though it is, we can't play Leyline because Luris is just way better, and we can't play Leyline because it's a terrible, atrociously bad top deck. I think Esper Sentinel really shines in this deck, versus the one game in Luris that we actually played against, or versus the one Grixis Death Shadow, Dragon's Rage Channeler Monkey deck where we actually played an Esper Sentinel and multiple Esper Sentinels. The fact that our opponent could pay for all of the triggers does not make Esper Sentinel a bad card. The fact that our opponent paid for all of the triggers after mulliganing and still beat us, I think, is incidental. If my opponent is taking the time to pay for all of the triggers, it means they're terrified of us drawing cards. It means that they're playing the game at about 1/2 or 1/3 the speed they would normally play, which is huge versus decks that play a million 1-mana spells. Like, Esper Sentinel, even if it doesn't draw you a card, still good, because it slows your opponent down. It's like Sphere of Resistance, but 1 mana and white. which is an effect that I really want. Now, it's sort of a Punisher effect. It's not as good as Sphere of Resistance, obviously, because it's either Sphere of Resistance or Phyrexian Arena, but your opponent picks the better of the two options for them, right? And it only triggers once. So your opponent has the opportunity to play around it, but the fact of the matter is if you lead on it, it makes your opponent really think about what they're playing on turn 1, whether they can expend a card to kill it or not, whether they have to wait for 2 mana. So it's a really strong turn 1 lead play. The fact that we can play Urza's Saga, Springleaf Drum, 0-drop, Esper Sentinel is huge. And of course, Sanctifier Envec. I don't think Grixis or Black-Red Monkey can beat this deck, or can beat this card. I don't think they can, because they can't cast Delve Threats, they can't build Delirium because we're exiling all the cards from their grave, they can't actually kill this card with anything short of Engineered Explosives, and what is that? They're gonna Engineered Explosives you on turn 3 after doing nothing on turn 1 and nothing on turn 2, and having Engineered Explosives, which is a 1 or 2 of in their sideboard on turn 3. Like, if they have that and it does that and it beats you, you did nothing else that entire game. And I think this card really is a card that a lot more people ought to be considering. Now, the downside is it is a double white card, which means you have to be basically mono white. And the downside of that is there's not a lot of playable double white spells, double white cards, and mono white decks, because you basically have to be playing mono white. Now, you could play a 2-color deck. You could play like a Fetch Shock Mana Base. You could play Dead Guy Ale or Stoneblade or whatever it's called. But if you are, you ought to be playing this card. Other than that, I still think maybe there needs to be a Flayer Husk in here, just because Flayer Husk is something you can tutor up off of Steel Shaper's Gift. It's something you can get off of Urza's Saga. Now, it may not be necessary if you're playing the 4 Urza Saga, which you definitely should be if you're playing this deck. Don't try and play it with 1. Don't try and play it with 2 or 3. Play 4. And if you can't play 4 because you don't own 4, don't play the deck. That is my strong suggestion to anybody that wants to play this list. I love Colossus Hammer combo. I love that it's a mono-white combo deck, because white does not get enough representation in Modern. There's just not enough truly white decks, and this is a mono-white equipment Metalcraft synergy. It is a white deck, it does white things, and it's powerful, and you don't see that all that often in competitive 4 of Constructed. That being said, I'm also kind of sad that it's a combo deck. I'm kind of sad that it doesn't play some sort of grindy deck game plan where it kind of can, because you can play Pure Steel Paladins, then you can start playing equipments, and you start drawing cards and trying to go into the late game, maybe making a bunch of tokens off Urza Saga. But like, I'm just sad that the metagame is so fast that the only way to really do anything in the metagame is to play a bunch of stuff on turn 1. And we saw how powerful that was all 5 rounds. I think I lost because of a little bit of inexperience with this deck. I didn't know the optimum lines. I kept a couple of really bad hands versus opponents. I definitely lost 1 round because of it. And Solitude definitely makes this deck worse, because how the hell do you beat Solitude? Lead on Giver of Runes, maybe? But, I mean, we're not even playing a 4 of Giver of Runes, and there's no guarantee that we have that card. Maybe I was supposed to mulligan to it. I never ended up doing that. But anyway, I've rambled enough. Hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of constructed content. If you did, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined. And remember, you can follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Though the last few times have been earlier than that. And I want you to know that you're all wonderful human beings. And I hope to see you again next time. Bye! Hey, just wanted to give a shout out to my patrons for the month of July. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate your support. And if you want to have your guys' names show up in this list, there's a link to my Patreon in the description down below. Thank you all so much.